Good morning, Professional Skills 2 students. Today we are going through your revision class. This is the end of the semester, so we will be going all the way to the end of everything that we have done in this course. Obviously, some of these are upcoming, so you won't have done them just yet. But you can watch this video as well as the first one posted a bit earlier in the semester to make sure that you've covered all of the important information. Alright, so in lecture 13, we discussed the GROW model of coaching, which stands for Goals, Reality, Options, and Way Forward. You remember that this was a really excellent model to help you get through personal problems, professional problems, and you can do it all on your own, or you can do it with another person. It's just a good way to see what your goals are, see what your current reality is, what needs to change, and how you're going to get there. In week 14, we looked at empowering through delegation. And you remember that delegation isn't just a case of passing off work, so if it's not a case of a manager not wanting to do it, so giving it to someone else. It needs to be something that a manager does to help everyone perform their roles and their functions optimally. Managers are responsible for getting a large amount of work done, and they can't do this on their own. They have to delegate work out. And if you think of group work, when you work in a group at BMH, one person can't do all of the work themselves. They need to make sure that they have others on board on their team so that they can get that work done through them. And this is exactly what effective managers do. They empower their subordinates. They empower their subordinates to accomplish goals by delegating not only the task, but delegating also the authority and the responsibility to complete them. And the empowerment that comes with that is obviously huge, and what this means is increasing the employees' involvement in their work through greater participation in decisions that control their work and expanding responsibility for the work outcome. In week 15, we looked at politicking, and what politicking is defined as in your textbooks is the actions that you can take to attempt to influence the distribution of advantages and disadvantages in an organization. Being in business, being professional, being in most situations these days actually means that your actions have to be carefully measured. You shouldn't ever behave randomly. You need to think through every single one of your actions before you follow through with it. And what this does often mean is keeping your emotions to yourself, controlling your emotions, having those 4 elements of emotional intelligence, and also confiding in the right people, talking to the right people about the right things. So you have to look at the person that you are now versus the person that you want to become. And your morals and values play a really huge role here. What are you willing to do to get to the top? What is right? What is ethical? All of these are important questions to ask. So politics relates to who gets what, when, and how in an organization, whereas politicking relates to the actions that you can take to influence the above. In lectures 16 and 17, we looked at leadership styles, and we looked primarily at transactional leaders who get things done through others through the process of delegation. So these are implementing leaders who apply both task and relationship behaviors, which we discussed in depth in this chapter, in a specific leadership style to influence people to do what they want them to do, and also to achieve organization goals. And it's really important that it influence people to do what the manager wants them to do or the leader wants them to do, not manipulate them into doing what they want to do. Because think back on a time when you've been manipulated, you generally figure it out and you generally don't like it. So influencing people is a much better way to get things done than manipulating them. So leadership is the ability to influence individuals and groups to the achievement of personal or institutional goals. And often a good transactional leader will align a person's personal goals with the institution's goals too. And how a person does this is down to their leadership style. Very important that leadership style does depend on the situation. There is no right leadership style, and it can change day to day. But what this course was about was learning which style to apply in which situations. Lectures 18 and 19, we looked at managing change. And an important change agent are transformational leaders. These people are very driven in terms of taking an organization in the direction that it should be going. And they're motivated by change rather than being afraid of it. A lot of us are afraid of change, but change is a good thing. It indicates progress in a lot of situations. So change shouldn't be something that you are afraid of. Transformational leaders are able to both initiate change, but also overcome others' resistance to it. And this is one of the main things that we looked at in this chapter. Most people are resistant to change. You don't want to change the way you've been doing things because you've been doing it that way for years. But a transformational leader is able to motivate people to adopt the change that the organization is proposing. These leaders provide people with direction, they motivate them, and they also look to find voluntary commitments. So who likes doing something that they're forced into doing? Nobody does. We all like doing things that we volunteer to do ourselves. It gives us greater ownership of a task, and it helps us do it better. And in this, goals and visions are created, and others are motivated into supporting these with evidence and incentives. We are more likely to behave in ways that are logical and rational, or that we feel are logical and rational, if we're given evidence to support that. And who doesn't like an incentive here or there? Lecture 20, we looked at facilitating teamwork, and we learned one of the main things was the difference between a team and a group. So to read these definitions out, a group is two or more individuals who interact to share information and to make decisions to help them perform within a given area of responsibility. But members of a group have no need to engage in collective work that requires joint efforts, so their performance is the average of each group's members' individual contribution. So that is a group. Whereas team members are committed to a common purpose, have a set of specific performance goals, and hold themselves mutually accountable for the team's results. Teams can produce positive synergy. The overall level of performance is greater than the sum of the individual inputs. And the question that I posed to you guys was, how many of you have actually worked in a team when you've been at BMH versus a group? And probably not many of you have. So I want you to think about the difference between a team and a group, and think about how you can turn your groups into teams with positive synergy. In lecture 21, we looked at valuing diversity. So this was just basically learning to get along with people who are different from us. Because we can get along with people who are similar to us because we think that we understand them, but it's a lot more difficult to get along and manage people who are very different from us. But a diverse workplace is a functioning workplace. It's so much better to work in an environment where there are lots of different kinds of people with different ideas and different opinions to you. Because if you just hired people who were exactly the same as you, what would be the point in hiring them? Just you do all of the work. So we want to value this kind of diversity. And the tips for doing this were to embrace diversity, to recruit broadly, to select fairly, to provide orientation and training, to sensitize all employees, to be flexible, motivate individually, and reinforce employee differences. Don't say things like, I don't see color, because we do all see color. And color isn't something that should be taken away. It should be something that is celebrated. It should be something that is discussed, so that we can all understand each other just a little bit better. Lecture 22, we discussed ethical decision making. It's important, especially when you are a manager, to make the right decisions in a workplace, but it's not always clear which decision is right. So why we discussed ethical decision making is so that we would have a set of rules or principles that define right and wrong conduct, which is what ethics is defined as. And in any organization, there should be some kind of code of conduct, so that you know exactly how to be ethical within your organization. But on top of that, it's quite important that you develop your own set of ethics that are going to guide your own ethical decision-making process. Remember that the law and ethics are not the same thing. Something can be ethical, but in your mind, something can be lawful, but in your mind, you just feel like it's not right. It's not ethical. and people who set the laws aren't always ethical either, as we know very well in South Africa. So ethics are crucial as they set the standard for the organization, and they also create the tone. If you're working in an unethical organization with the big things, you might find that people engage in small unethical behaviors like stealing stationery, because they know that an organization, that organization that they work for, is unethical overall. All right, lecture 23 and 24, we looked at creative problem solving. And we discovered that success often depends on making the right decisions at the right time. And making those decisions is important, but it's only one part of the problem solving process. We don't just make snap decisions. We don't just look at something and take in all the evidence and make the decision on the spot. Decision making often takes quite a while. So unless a problem has been defined, its causes identified, it's looked at every single angle, can be really difficult to solve. How do we know it's not going to happen again? And how do we know this solution is actually going to work to solve that problem if we don't know how this problem is defined? And that's what makes an effective problem solver. They know how to gather and evaluate information to define and clarify a problem so that they fully understand it. Effective problem solvers know the value of generating more than one action alternative and weighing up all the implications of a plan. And this takes me back to the GROW model of coaching. When you look at your different options, you put down lots of different action alternatives. You weigh up all of the implications of those, and then you decide on just one way forward. Lecture 25, we looked at resolving conflict. And as we all know, conflict is a natural part of life. You're bound to meet someone and have some kind of form of conflict at work, in your personal lives, because we all have different goals. And at work specifically, resources are often scarce. The organization's politics also play a role, and we looked at this in politicking. But conflict isn't always a bad thing, because it's going to happen. There's no chance that we're not going to have conflict, because we are always going to step on people's toes, no matter what situation we are in. So you need to make sure that we deal with it properly in a professional way, so that conflict can actually end up stimulating creativity, innovation, and change. But remember, not all conflicts are constructive. Some of them are damaging, but it's really important that you deal with all conflicts, because otherwise they're going to end up causing more trouble in the long run. 26, we looked at persuading. If one skill differentiates successful politicians from unsuccessful ones, it's the ability to persuade others. We all have one of those friends who can just persuade us to do absolutely anything. And these people are successful in life because if they can motivate and persuade others to follow them, they're going to have a good following and they're going to be successful. Successful politicians are able to make forceful arguments that appear logical and compelling. These people also know exactly what to say, and also very, very importantly, when to say it. Being persuasive will enable you to achieve a lot in your life. Just think about everything that you do as an act, some kind of act of persuasion. In this slide, when I'm speaking now, I'm attempting to persuade you to carry on watching, to read on the slides. Your dress sense is persuading people to do something in a job interview, to take you seriously or not. And a job interview is basically just 30 minutes of you trying to persuade someone to give you a salary. In lecture 26, we looked at negotiating, and this is a process in which two or more parties exchange goods or services and attempt to agree upon the exchange rate for them. And remember, this is goods or services, so this can be a lot of different things in the workplace. Managers spend time negotiating salaries, budgets, in resolving conflicts, and in negotiating for resources. In lecture 27, we looked at communication skills, making the most of your experiential learning. We looked at communication skills, self-confidence, enthusiastic participation, industry and business knowledge, personal organization, professional networks, and professional ethics. And then finally, in lecture 28, we discuss the all-important job interview. We looked at tips on how to ace your first job interview, and we looked at a lot of different aspects that go into that. So well done for nearly computing professional skills and your final year at BMH. Please get in touch with me should you have any questions. You're nearly there. Congratulations. Push through. You can do it.